but what are some of the biggest challenges that AEC firms face in managing and organizing all of this project information as the amount of information keeps growing?
It's interesting because a lot of organizations tend to look at technologies that will help consolidate everything on one platform. I think the way that we've been looking at this is quite different, because when you try to take one piece of software to do everything, you also face the challenge of change management in the organization, right? People like
Project information management is a critical aspect in the AEC industry. It's surprising how often it's overlooked, despite being a major contributor to the success or failure of projects. Effective project information management is the backbone of any successful AEC organization today, and it's essential that you must get it right. In today's episode, I'm joined by Carl Veillette, Chief Product Officer at Newforma, to discuss one of the biggest challenges in the AEC industry, managing the growing volume of project information. As data increases, firms are struggling to keep it accessible, secure, and organized. Carl will explain how this data overload impacts timelines, budgets, and collaboration, and he'll provide some practical solutions to streamline workflows and improve project outcomes. I'm your host, Anthony Fasano, and this is AEC Project Management. All right, now I'd like to welcome our guest onto the show for today. Today, I'm joined by Carl Veillette. Carl is the Chief Product Officer at Newforma. Carl, welcome to the AEC Project Management Podcast.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you, excited to dive into this topic today, which is an important topic in our industry right now, of course, which is just project information and how much project information there is. So why don't we start off by you telling us a little bit about yourself and what took you into your current role as Chief Product Officer at Newforma?
So I started my career, I graduated in architecture. It was about 2008. And then my first job was actually not architecture. I was working as a designer for a subcontractor. So a large steel manufacturer. I got exposed to technology as part of like the projects they were delivering, and it really piqued my interest, let's say it like that, right? So I got exposed to technologies like building information modeling and those sort of things. So it was great, I think, as a first experience, because I got exposed with the construction site and of the delivery process and the beginning of the delivery process, which was what I studied for, right? So after a few years, I decided to get back to the beginning of the process, work for a design firm, mostly for MEP design and structure design also. So that's kind of like how I started my career. And after a couple of years of trying to learn and evolve my knowledge in the design and delivery of the project, I figured, why don't I, start something that's going to help organizations adopt technology, right? So I was really passionate about that topic, and we co-founded BIM1 Consulting back then, which was really helping organizations digitalize their processes from a BIM perspective, right? Implementing those new technologies as part of their delivery. And then after a couple of years, we were working on a project, and then we saw an opportunity for developing a software. And then so we co-founded BIMtrack, which later got sold to Newforma in 2021. And that's where I think I would call it match made in heaven, because like we had the same DNA really, but looking at different parts of the project. And I think, the first years of my career was really evolving the design delivery, like all the BIM technology. But now with Newforma, like we go much deeper in the processes, right? We look at contract administration, information management, communications, and how good communication management can help reduce risk on projects, right? And so we build technologies for that. So since then, my role has evolved at Newforma, so I'm now Chief Product Officer. So my day-to-day is evolving our strategies to better manage information in architecture, engineering, and construction firms. So we're building technologies that help streamline project processes, but also reduce the risk that companies face on projects by creating complete project archives.
Wow, that's great. It sounds like from the work that we do with a lot of organizations, that sounds like it's really a needed service with the way things have evolved today, which kind of leads me to my next question for you, which is maybe you can talk a little bit, Carl, about how the volume of project data in the AEC industry has kind of evolved in recent years.
Yeah. So it's interesting because everybody talks about the index of productivity in our industry these days, right? So I guess like it's been flat at best, right? If it's not decreasing, and I think the reason for that is it seems counterintuitive, right? But I think it's the information explosion, right? We're generating more and more data, and this is because of the capital investment that's been going on in construction, right? So I think it's great that there is so much money poured from venture capitals and private equities in the space, because it creates startups, and there's a lot more choices for the design firms, the construction firms. But also as a result, like there's more silos created, and then there's more technologies that help create more data, right? Which continues to further expand the challenge around data governance and those sort of things. There's a stat that catch my attention recently. It's by the FMI Corporation, and it said that construction companies produce 2.5 quintillion bytes of data daily, right? So that's a lot of data, actually. So it's easy to say that in the last couple of years, data has almost fourfold, right? Now companies are struggling with managing rising costs for storage because they've got duplicated data entries in multiple systems. They're facing, because they've digitalized more and more of their processes, and it used to be paper based 20 years ago, right? But there's still some things that are not digitalized today, and that continues to grow. And as they continue to do that, the data volume is going to continue to grow. You just think how like the effect of BIM technologies, right? BIM technologies made it so easy to create more sheets and sheet sets, on projects. Now, this is also affecting the volume of data that they have to manage. And it's the same thing for other project activities, right? The more you digitalize, the more you expose yourself for security risk also, right? Ransomware attacks and things like that.
Right. So, and that's kind of where I was going. And you mentioned a couple things, but what are some of the biggest challenges that AEC firms face in managing and organizing all of this project information as the amount of information keeps growing?
Yeah. So it's interesting because a lot of organizations tend to look at technologies that will help consolidate everything on one platform. I think the way that we've been looking at this is quite different, because when you try to take one piece of software to do everything, you also face the challenge of change management in the organization, right? People like to use their own tools. They've got some habits, right? And they've got preferred platforms. And of course, to some extent, if you think about innovation, you want people to explore different piece of tool, right? Different piece of software and things that will help make their life easier. So the way we've been approaching that is how can we create kind of an umbrella, a unified view of the project information without having to change the tools that people use, right? So that's really been like the driver and how we've been looking at this challenge is connecting the industry through a connector strategy. So that's one of the things I think that will really help the industry evolve and better manage the project information without changing their existing workflows.
What about like on the flip side? I know you mentioned before, like for example, security risks, but maybe you can talk about some of the how poor information management can affect your projects and your organization.
Yeah. So I guess that's interesting because a lot of people talk about AI these days, right? So poor information management is going to prevent you from creating value with AI downstream, because if you don't have quality data, AI is not going to be good for prediction and insights, right? So a lot of organizations started to look at their data governance strategies right now, I guess as a consequence of like AI trending up. And then, okay, now they're wondering, what's my strategy for AI, right? Some organization will say, my strategy is no strategy. It's actually controlling AI because I don't want AI in my project. It's creating risk for me. I don't want data leak outside my organization. All the knowledge I've been capturing with my 20 years old veteran that have all the knowledge, like this is my secret sauce. So I see AI as a risk. Some other organizations, they're trying to put a strategy in place, and then now they're starting to look at where is my data, right? And that's a question when you say it fast, it sounds easy, but it's not. They've got data in partner systems, right? They are invited to collaborate in their systems. They have information, on Microsoft tools. They've got information on-prem on their file server, right? So trying to just map their data and understand, what's where, what type of project has data in certain data silos, right? And then trying to figure out how to bring all that data all together into a full, complete project record, right?
That's interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
Because basically, like, everyone is talking about AI, but to your point, you can only get so much out of it depending on your data and how your data is organized and where your data is that the AI can pull from to be able to do whatever you want it to do. So it's kind of like your foundation is the data, and then the AI is going to kind of be built on top of that. And you have to make sure that your kind of foundation is strong, which is probably something maybe a lot of companies haven't done yet. So.
For me, I think, for any AI project, I mean, one of the thing you're going to have to invest a lot of time in is integration in the first place, right? Integrating your data. And then once this is done, then you can move on with the actual, AI specific algorithm development and those sort of things.
And I would think another complication to this is we see a lot of mergers and acquisitions today. And now you have two companies with different data sets, right? And then they're coming together. So I would think that's just another, hurdle that people have to think about, because there are we work with a lot of companies and they're constantly saying, oh, we just acquired this company here. We just acquired this company here. And I know for project management, it's difficult because now you have project managers that have a different tools and philosophy that are getting mixed into your company.
Yeah.
And then I would imagine they have different data and systems that they're bringing in as well too.
Yeah, definitely. It's a good topic actually, because I was talking with one of our customers recently, and it's an engineering company that make a lot of acquisitions. That's part of their kind of growth strategy, and they mentioned that they're using our software to help them allocate resources across the acquisitions they make. So I was intrigued about how they do that, and then they explained that with our on-prem software, when they acquire a company that use the same product, there is a functionality we offer that connects the two kind of workspace together, right? So It makes it easy to do discovery on projects. So if, let's say, they're about to bid on a project, right? They want to search through the information and find another project where they've used this specific building component that's kind of unique, right? And figure out if they ran into some issues for when they use that specific thing or when they delivered that specific type of complex project, right? So now they can do discovery, and they can not only search across the projects that they've delivered before, but the projects that their acquisition have delivered before. So it makes it easy for them to surface that information and be more efficient when trying to win new projects.
That's great. And that's actually just the example you gave is actually a really good example for PMs in terms of staying in contact with your clients. Like you mentioned, you learned from your customer what they were using it for. And then you can kind of help them with that, or maybe help other clients or customers with that same issue. So that's a good lesson there as well. So Carl, based on, you work with a lot of AEC firms and you see a lot of technology going on in the industry. How are some of these AEC firms adopting tools like BIM, cloud computing, and AI to help with their project delivery?
Yeah. So I think, I've seen, of course, BIM has come a long way, right? Things started to take off, I think, for real, mass adoption, I would say probably around 2012, 2013, right? So we've seen BIM evolve into more than just a 3D visuals, but really as a source of information. And that's kind of for us, BIM is one of the three aspects of the things we capture, right? So there's project management activities, there is information management, which is unorganized information, like emails flying over, files on a SharePoint, things like that, the conversations in Microsoft Teams, and then also BIM, right? So when we think about complete project archive, we think about how we can build technologies that search holistically across those three spheres, right? Some of the functionalities we built search, right? I crack jokes sometimes. I say we're kind of the construction search, the Google search of construction projects, right? So we search, inside the content of files, right? We OCR and we extract the information in native file formats of the industry. We looked into different repositories that we connect with, right? So you can surface information from Autodesk, from Microsoft products. So we act kind of as a net over the project to index and surface all that information. So I guess like search's been there for a long time. It's probably not sexy for a lot of people, but it's definitely something that's top of mind these days with the information explosion, the growing amount of technologies on projects, and how you actually develop a strategy to mitigate risk on your project. Because as I like to say, there's someone in my team that always say that the last phase of a construction project is litigation, right? And when you get there,
right,
you're going to be able to access your information. And if you work out of someone else's tool, you don't have proper records, then you're creating risk for your organization.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And that comes down to, that's a big part of project management, which is risk, and understanding where your risks are so you can try to minimize them. And obviously having the right records and the access to the data that you need is an important piece of that. Are there any other like security concerns with AEC information management and making sure that data is protected and compliant? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's security and compliance, right? I guess like they go hand in hand sometimes, but I see compliance like you look at international standards like ISO 19650, things like that right. Are made to help organization better navigate through stages of validation, across, documents, having a better framework for organizing the documents on the project. But when it comes to security, right? I mean, almost every country have their own kind of security requirements. There are two aspects. I think there's the data residency aspect, right? Where the data lives, does it remain within the boundaries of the country, right? So that's one concern that we address with providing multiple different deployment options with our technologies, like an on-prem option, a cloud option, a regionalized cloud option where you can host, in one of the three regions that we currently offer. And there's like when you work for DoD or government projects, there's FedRAMP, right? So FedRAMP is something that we have embarked on the journey to achieve. We also look in the past in ISO 27001 certification, which we achieved with our cloud product. So, organizations, like, depending on the nature of their projects, like they would most likely be exposed to those customer owners kind of requirements. And it's been, top of mind for us really to deliver one of the most secure cloud platform for project delivery in the industry. And so that's kind of like, I think, you think about security, you think about security risk rising with the amount of tools you use on the project, right? So how can you make sure that your ecosystem is secure? And then so you have to start to dig into, what type of information is exchanged on what platform, and you're trying to map that. We see IT departments are growing globally. Our customers used to have like one or two people, in those departments, and now it's becoming a nightmare. Like you've got 5-6 people looking into it, just because, again, like the ecosystem, like the project tech stack is growing.
Right. Oh yeah, for sure. It's growing by a lot. So just one question on what you said. So just to be clear, so your software, one of the things it can do is help firms to stay compliant with some of these agencies? Is that the idea?
Of course. So you look at ISO 19650, like we've got various tools to help with the compliance. Make sure that you respect the format, the naming conventions, for things. You think about document control, for instance, which is a big part of what we do. So that's an area where we have enforced compliance kind of functionalities in there, but also security, again, top of mind for our customers. A lot of our customers are working on DoD projects, right? So our on-prem solution can be deployed into an environment that enables those firms to deliver those projects. But also with our cloud product, we're embarking on a journey for FedRAMP, right? Which is, again, demonstrative of how much effort we put into security.
That's interesting. So, Carl, right now in our industry, there's kind of like a talent war. Companies are trying to hire people away from other companies. There's a talent shortage. How do AEC firms approach knowledge transfer between projects and manage the loss of expertise when they have key team members leave?
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest challenge of our industry, right? So you've got not only knowledge management, because you've got aging population in the industry. You look at the statistics, right? So you've got the veterans that retire with their knowledge and their expertise. And then you've got also at the same time labor shortage, right? So a lack of interest from the newer generations out there to get, into architecture school or things like that. So you're facing two things, right? You're trying to win more projects. Let's say you're a design firm. You've got that knowledge that slowly disappears, and then you're finding ways to attract new talent. I think the way that I've been thinking about it is, how can you ensure that the information lasts beyond the people that retire in your organization, right? So I was talking about search, right? When you think about search, it seems like a simple concept, right? But if you're able to make search work across multiple projects, you're actually building a knowledge base. And that knowledge base is going to help your team be more efficient when they search for solutions, right? So the new kid that got out of school, they just get into contract administrations. The first time they're doing that, they're going to try to get a hold of the experts, in the firm. Maybe there's only a few handful of them left. But they're also going to start to do search, right? They're going to be searching into past projects. They're going to be finding similar situations, similar problems. So when you unlock that search and you extend it beyond the context of a single project, you actually unlock knowledge of your organization. So that's kind of like how we tackle a part of the problem, I guess, because it would be hard to completely solve it.
Right. No, but that's helpful because if you're searching for data and the person who entered it is no longer with the organization, it doesn't matter as long as it's in the system and you have access to it and you can find it. So that kind of reduces your risk around just because someone leaves, we lose that knowledge.
It all comes down to complete project archives, right? But being able to consume that and search across project is also really, really helpful in teaching the job, I guess, to the younger generations coming out of school.
So, Carl, what strategies do you recommend for these firms to create an effective data strategy that's kind of aligned with their business goals?
Yeah. So I think, there's multiple things that comes to my mind. The first one is, how do you make sure, like, part of the data strategy, I think there should be something around risk mitigation, right? So how do you want to manage the risk on your project? So you look at, mapping your whole project delivery, right? Which partners do I interact with? Which tools does my team have to interact with? And then as you start to map that, then you capture essentially like what needs to be part of your copy of the project record, right? And you look into how technology can play a role in that. You look at communication channels, right? How is information exchanged? And then we all know that 10, 20 years ago, emails was the number one communication for exchanging information in history. A lot of people think that it's been decreasing, but it's not been decreasing. But in addition to not decreasing, now you've got other tools for communication like Microsoft Teams, right? And then COVID probably created an accelerated adoption of Microsoft Teams, and then now you've got communication channels which are often not backup,
right?
And there's decision made in those tools, right? And then a good example of where a good data strategy could have prevented litigation. There's an engineering firm in Canada that, after chatting on a video conference in Microsoft Teams with a general contractor, they did a ton. They actually did post something in there. The general contractor did a thumbs up on it, and then there's a litigation going on. So the general contractor said, "Nope, I've never seen that." And then they go in court and they showed the communication in Microsoft Teams, and then the thumbs up was later recognized as a form of yes from the general contractor.
That's
and they managed to get out of the litigation issue. So, you think about communication and how it can help, but it can also be a problem if it's not well managed, right? So because they had this archiving kind of functionality and this record of the information in the context of the project, we managed to surface it through our search and they got away from it. So
wow, that's very interesting, and that's very dangerous because it could have been anybody at that company just liking it, right?
Correct. And that's a change. This is as a consequence of technology evolving, newer generations using different approach for communications, and that's creating risk for the organization. So this is just a concrete example, I think, of data governance, right? And then what tools people are using, what's the best practices around those things, what's our lesson learned, right? But
and it's a reminder that every piece of communication is legal documentation of a project. So You need to be aware of that, because if you're just messaging someone or email them, it doesn't matter because anything could show up in court.
Yeah, that's true. That's true facts.
That's a problem. Yeah.
And then for me, I think part of the data governance kind of strategy, there needs to be a very evolved, I would say, education program for the staff, because they need to be aware of those things, right? When they adopt a technology, like what are they changing? Are they exposing the firm to new risk, right? And the more awareness they have, awareness training, I guess, the better your firm will be navigating through that, because it's impossible to map every single piece of technology and control everything, right?
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I mean, I can see that example that you gave is something that companies really need to think about and be aware of with all these different communication channels now, Teams, Slack, whatever they're using, is just more areas of risk for them. Yeah. Potentially on their projects. ChatGPT. Yeah, exactly. Oh, I use ChatGPT and then I followed that. What's wrong with that type of thing? No, that's interesting. So, Carl, what final piece of advice can you give to AEC professionals who really want to excel in project information management?
Yeah. So I would say communication, I think like what makes good project is good communication, right? So I think one of the things that people underestimate is how communications are tracked and how they are organized, and what sort of like risk comes with bad communications. And I would say that's probably an area where probably all the segments of our space, architecture, engineering, and constructions are not actively looking into, right? So there's a lot of like contract administration platforms out there. There's like PIM solutions that actually help with communications, because now you can see what you're designing, you can see it in 3D, right? But like the true information management piece of it, right? Like those emails that are still flowing on the project and very much there, right? Decisions are made in there, and often that's not coming back into a project context. It stays within the inbox of the people, disappear when the project finish, right? And that's for me probably like the most important component of the project information.
That's awesome. It's all good stuff. And yeah, listen, the project information is absolutely critical to your success as, number one, a project manager individually, and then, of course, your AEC organization, just because that's everything for you. That's what you lean on. It's all legal documentation, and that's what's going to help you deliver your projects effectively. So once again, Carl Veillette, Carl has been really helpful in taking us through some of this information that is really, really important for PMs, but not really, there isn't a lot of knowledge necessarily around it yet for a lot of PMs. And that's why we wanted to have Carl come on. He's Chief Product Officer at Newforma. They're doing great things to help AEC organizations. And Carl, thank you so much for spending some time with us here on the AEC PM podcast.
It's a pleasure. Until next time.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Carl. This is one of the most important things in the AEC industry today, managing information. And like Carl said, without good information, without organized data, you're not going to be able to leverage AI, and that's going to put your organization in some trouble and maybe behind the curve. If you enjoyed my conversation with Carl, please subscribe to our channel here. We do put out videos like this on a weekly basis to help engineers become better managers and leaders. I'll see you next week.